Y buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, dependiendo a qué hora está escuchando esta información. Good morning, good evening. Welcome to the show, Líderes del Futuro. Today we have the opportunity to talk with Mr. Ron Calloway. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas a su programa. El día de hoy vamos a hablar con el señor Ron Calloway. Welcome to the show. This is your first time with us. You are a candidate for the office of Superintendent of Schools in the County of Sonoma. The first question we have for you is if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you think that you can offer the Latinx community at this time. Entonces, la pregunta que tenemos para usted es, si nos puede decir un poquito o contar un poquito acerca de usted y qué es lo que usted cree que puede ofrecer a la comunidad Latinx en estos tiempos.
Yes, my name is Ron Meza Calloway, and I am a Sonoma County native. I grew up in Santa Rosa in the Rincon Valley area, went to school there, and actually came back and taught at the same elementary school that I attended as a boy. The principal was still there, and he hired me. I'm a graduate of Cloverdale High School, and so I've long lived in Sonoma County. Why the difference to make for our children, especially in areas of Portrait of Sonoma County, where we have identified the necessary needs and what we should do to provide extra resources for our Latinx population. We need to begin at the age of 2 to identify literacy as our main goal, because we need to have students walking in the door as kindergartners, having the basic fundamental reading skills. And that means you've been exposed to literature. It doesn't matter whether it's English or Spanish, but being exposed so that you walk in the door ready to read. Because otherwise, you could walk in a 1 million word gap starting in kindergarten. The goal, of course, is to have every child reading by the end of 3rd grade. It is imperative so that they can work on any advanced skill they want.
Su nombre es Ron Calloway, es nativo de aquí del condado de Sonoma. Él fue a la escuela a Rincon Valley, en el área. Él fue graduado de la High School de Cloverdale. Y la razón por la que él está aspirando para esta posición es porque a él le gustaría que los niños a los 2 años estuvieran aprendiendo literatura, donde puedan entrar al kinder ya preparados para la escuela, donde cuando lleguen a un nivel, a un 3er grado, ya los niños puedan tener la literatura o la lectura bien formada. ¿Me brinqué algo más?
Okay, and so it's important among the Latinx community, perhaps the biggest concern or the biggest worry is making sure that their children, again, graduate high school and do something a little bit above what their parents did. Mm-hmm. How can you make sure that this is going to happen? Entonces, la pregunta es, hay muchos padres, madres de familia que nos escuchan que su más grande preocupación es no nada más que se gradúen sus hijos, hijas de la preparatoria, pero que hagan más de lo que los padres, madres han hecho. ¿Cómo usted planea apoyar a esos padres?
The approach we need to take is that we first need to go into our Latinx community and go to where they are, not have them come to us. So many times we tend to say, oh, come to us. No, we have to think in a different term. Our first step is going into the community, meeting them, learning and valuing what they have to offer to us as a families, as their traditions, so that we can build upon that. Because if you're connected to a school, as a community school, you become more involved in the community. Now, on the next piece, which is the educational piece for higher ed. What we need to do is look at how we create the 7 through 12 curriculum so that we put into place classes that support the needs of all students so they can create those pathways to go through A through G courses, which allow them gateways to whether you want to go to college, which would be fantastic to create that college pathway, but also to create areas where they can go any pathway, hospitality, STEM, research, climate, all those pieces that we need to have our children engaged in with career opportunities.
So, prácticamente dice que lo importante para él es no que la comunidad venga hacia él, sino encontrar que ellos vayan hacia él, ir hacia la comunidad y aprender acerca de la comunidad latina, acerca de la cultura, y referente a la educación es ver cómo crear un currículum, en este caso para los niños que están en el 7º y 8º grado, para crear un pasaje y crear que los niños puedan desarrollarse y tener una carrera no solamente en hospitalidad, en clima, sino que puedan expandir sus áreas de aprendizaje en muchas formas.
Okay. And so following up on this idea of how do we prepare children, on average, about 60% of children who graduate high school and go on to a 4-year university or go on to a community college, when they fill out the application and they ask them, what is your major going to be? About 60% of them say, I don't know. How do we better prepare students at a younger age to be able to be ready to decide ahead of time whether or not, as you mentioned, they're going to go into, again, technical careers, or, again, Santa Rosa Junior College, or transfer directly to the university? What approach are you planning to take for that? Entonces, una de las cosas, hablando acerca de esto, de cómo preparamos a los jóvenes y jovencitas, una de las cosas que vemos frecuentemente es que estudiantes que se gradúan de la prepa y van a un colegio o universidad, muchas veces 60% de ellas dicen, ¿sabes qué? Yo no sé lo que voy a hacer como carrera, estoy indecidido, indecidida. ¿Qué va usted a planear hacer desde una edad temprana para asegurarse que estudiantes estén listos y listas para decidir sus carreras con tiempo?
So in order for us to create that pathway for children, we need to start our conversation in kindergarten with our families, in 1st grade, in 2nd grade, informing children of the pathways and what they can expect, and our families. Because if we save this conversation till the 11th and 12th grade, we're way too late. We need to start the conversation, like I mentioned, way earlier in kindergarten. Then in 7th and 8th grade, we put our resources into that place with our businesses coming in to talk to our children about every possibility and pathways they can go to, so they know those places, and we can create classes that they can then internship in, actually starting in 7th grade. When you think about a teacher pipeline, because one of the big issues we don't have children seeing themselves when they come into a classroom. We need to start that pipeline in 7th grade. We need to have it at Roseland Prep. We need to have it at LC Allen, at Pioneer High School, at Sonoma Valley, so that we create this pipeline of educators. That's just one little snippet. We need to do it for all careers, but I want to specifically target education in that one.
Dice que una de las conversaciones que él empezaría sería empezar desde el kinder, 1º, 2º, 3er año, y si eso sería no solamente con los niños, pero también con los padres de familia, para saber cuáles son los recursos, que se les puede proveer a los niños y que ellos puedan entrar en un área de que les gustaría tener una carrera, y así poder aprender el pasaje o el área donde ellos quisieran entrar a la carrera. En este caso también el grado 7º y 8º es algo muy importante, y entraría también en alguna de las escuelas que sería como Pioneer, Montgomery, LC Allen y RCUP.
Yeah, RCUP, yeah.
Thank you for that. And so another of the large concerns for the Latinx community, and this has been an issue that has existed for decades and decades, and that is the disparity between the number of suspensions and expulsions among Latinx as compared with white students. What do you plan to do to address this issue? Because often I specifically request information from the districts every year on average. And the numbers, again, there is no comparison. What do you plan to do in order to address that issue of disparity?
So the disproportionality is obviously very clear and real. What we need to do as a community is first start with making sure our students have support with counseling and that arena, so that when and teachers are taught how to work with their classrooms to create a safe environment and learn how we can deal with certain areas. We don't need to go to suspension like that. That was an old method and it doesn't work. Because what the issue there is, a child's suspended, so they're not even in class. So we've really defeated our purpose. We need to keep children in school. We need to find ways to get them to be engaged in school. That's the most important thing. When I mentioned the seventh, especially once you hit seventh grade, if we don't create classes that engage our students of color, of any means, then we are on the same path for the next 20 years. Straightforward to that. We need to make a change in the classrooms, obviously help support teachers and keep students in the rooms. It's so imperative for their education in our community.
Entonces, una de las preguntas que es muy importante para la comunidad Latinx, antes de que la traduzca, es de las suspensiones y las expulsiones, y este ha sido un problema que ha existido por décadas, desafortunadamente, en este condado. ¿Qué es lo que planea hacer usted para asegurarse de que esto no siga sucediendo? Porque cuando comparamos a la comunidad Latinx con la comunidad anglosajona, no hay comparación. La comunidad Latinx siempre es afectada.
Y él dijo que una de las, desafortunadamente, la desproporción está muy alta. Entonces, lo que él haría como comunidad es empezar con la consejería y aprender las ciertas áreas donde los niños están siendo expulsados, y también cómo puede ser que un niño se expulse y realmente no está aprendiendo. Entonces, él trataría de trabajar no solamente con los maestros, sino también con los consejeros para crear clases para los niños y que realmente se puedan desarrollar especialmente en alguna de las áreas donde lo necesitan.
Okay. And then the other question is the EL students, English language learners. What do you see as the responsibility of the superintendent of all schools in Sonoma County that would affect the outcome of EL students, English language learners, being able to succeed? We have a large number in every one of the school districts of Sonoma County. We have a large number of students who have been labeled as English language learners for 6 or more years. The research tells us that once students have reached 6 or more years as English language learners, they are at a high risk of not graduating from high school. We had recently an issue with Petaluma School District specifically, that for multiple years, they have been using an outdated and, for lack of better words, unlawful system of education for EL students. What is the responsibility of the superintendent in overseeing that students are progressing towards being exited, from the EL program on time?
So the responsibility is to bring forth the data to the communities, the local school districts, sharing that, creating a professional development plan with each of the districts for the teaching staff and the classified staff, everybody together. Because what you need to do is you need to educate that the best education is in the classroom. And what happens is we have this thought that especially on the EL plans, many districts have a pull-out plan. They're gonna move their student over here for half an hour or 30 minutes outside the classroom to be educated by another individual. It could be a paraeducator, it could be a teacher. Unfortunately, that is not the way to teach children. The better way is to push in model, have supports for the children, maybe the classified or other a support teacher comes into the room to help support them while they're getting their English language arts lesson, and they're being supported inside the room. Because every time you get pulled out of the room, you're not getting the full curriculum of your peers. That is the number one priority of creating that plan into the classrooms. Teachers, students in the classroom, not pull out, push in model.
Entonces, la otra pregunta aquí es en relación a los aprendices de inglés. Hay muchos estudiantes, muchas estudiantes, y cada año yo pido esta información y desafortunadamente sabemos que hay un número muy grande en todos los distritos del Condado de Sonoma que han estado como aprendices de inglés por 6 años o más, y los estudios nos enseñan que esos tipos de estudiantes desafortunadamente tienen una propensidad muy alta a no graduarse de la preparatoria. ¿Qué ve usted como la responsabilidad del superintendente de educación del Condado de Sonoma de supervisar y asegurarse que las reglas estén siguiendo? Un ejemplo de esto es el Distrito Escolar de Petaluma, que por varios años ha estado funcionando con un programa para aprendices de inglés que ya no existe y hasta cierto punto se podría hacer es ilegal. ¿Cuál ve usted como la responsabilidad entonces del superintendente o la superintendente de escuelas para asegurarse que estas estudiantes van a sobresalir?
Él dice que a él le gustaría desarrollar un plan de aprendizaje donde lo que se necesita hacer, en lugar de sacar a los niños fuera de la clase, que usualmente la mayoría de los planes o los planes que son dentro de las escuelas es sacar al niño por media hora y ponerlo en otro salón y que otra persona le dé la clase. Entonces a él le gustaría, en lugar de sacar al niño, dejar al niño dentro del salón y traer otro maestro extra donde le pudiera enseñar lo de la clase para que no se retrase el niño. Pero eso es lo que a él le gustaría traer, que se incluyera el maestro, el niño, dentro de la misma clase en lugar de que se saque de la clase.
Okay. And I have a couple more questions and then you'll have an opportunity to give a quick closing here. What is your view on charter schools in general? Are they a good thing for the community? Is this something we need to change? In general, what is your overview of charter schools?
I think they've been a very good thing for our community. Obviously, Cali and Windsor. You've got Cesar Chavez now in Santa Rosa City Schools, program in Sonoma. Those have given opportunity, and obviously, I think no one could deny what Roseland Prep has created for communities. Those charter schools have given opportunities to families who might not otherwise have had those opportunities. And so, and Roseland Prep has been listed as one of the best high schools in the area. So that's why I'm in favor of having opportunities for children and families using this charter school route.
Entonces, la siguiente pregunta es, ¿cuál es su opinión de las escuelas que le llaman charter, que son buenas o no son buenas para la comunidad?
Y lo que él dice que son muy buenas para la comunidad, ya que dentro del condado de Sonoma tenemos varias escuelas que son charter, el César Chávez, hay otra en Sonoma, y también la Santa Rosa Prep, que ha sido una de las mejores high schools, se puede decir, que es parte de charter. So, él piensa que es muy bueno para la comunidad, que han sido muy buenas para la comunidad.
And last is juvenile hall. We end up with, again, a disproportionate amount of Latinx students who end up being arrested, detained, and taken to juvenile hall. How can you all, because the schools for juvenile hall are overseen directly by the Department of the Superintendent's Office, how can the school system improve in juvenile halls in order to prepare students for college or to go back to their school districts?
Well, obviously, to provide those resources for students in those classrooms. I think one of the big pieces I kind of mentioned earlier, bringing in businesses with trades as well to help learn those pieces, to help them engage in something, because obviously We have not been successful on a piece of paper and pencil sometimes, and we need to think of different ways of educating children that give us the same background as the paper and pencil, but a different way of approaching it. And that engages the student, and those students are in that pipe, and unfortunately in that pipeline, we've got to create a way to get them out of that pipeline. If we go back to the same pathway, our results are going to be the same. We need to recreate those classes for those students, and then engage them once they get into the 7th and 8th grade traditional schools when they go back, and into obviously a career pathway as well.
Entonces, la última pregunta que tengo para ustedes, ¿qué piensa, qué recursos deben de existir para estudiantes en la juvenil, ya que sabemos que un número de estudiantes Latinx terminan en esas escuelas y ustedes, la oficina del superintendente es responsable por esas escuelas? ¿Qué servicios deberían de hacerse accesibles para asegurarse que estos estudiantes van a sobresalir?
Proveer los recursos en las escuelas, y uno de sus ejemplos que dio es como traer negocios para que puedan como hacer un intercambio de aprendizaje. También crear diferentes modos para que los niños puedan aprender.
Okay, and with that, you have about 3.5 minutes to do your closing and do the translation. I know it's not a lot of time, but I have to follow my own rules here. Entonces, con eso tiene más o menos 3.5 minutos para hacer sus últimos comentarios y que los traduzcan.
I just love being an educator. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I teach reading to first graders. I go in, I teach lessons. And I think of students when I'm in my groups. And I think of one student in particular who is a Latinx student. His name is Isaac. Isaac, at the beginning of the year, was struggling, and you're watching him progress because we've been able to watch him progress. We take something called DIBBLES, which is an assessment, and he's making great progress. And I see him lighting up. He is making the progress that we would want in any child in our community. My fear is what happens to Isaac when he gets to high school if we don't continue this path for him so that he can become anything he wants in his life. And so that is my mission, to create a pathway for Isaac and other children, all children in our community. I also believe one of the biggest things we need to address in our community is housing. Because if we create wonderful pathways for a job, be it after high school, after the JC, or a 4-year career, and you have no workforce housing to live in, then we will not be able to have you stay in our community, which means we will not have a rich, vibrant community. So we need to think in a big global sense. And the superintendent of the county needs to be at the forefront. If you're in education, you know that our job is to create pathways for children. And we need to create a place for them to live and create their own families, because those families become our customers, right? And that is so important. Additionally, since 2017 and the Tubbs fire, we have to work on the social and emotional health of our community. No student in Sonoma County has not been impacted by something since 2017. There has not been a normal year. We must, as a community, address the mental and social health of all children. You read Youth Truth Survey on communities, and their children are basically telling us we need help in this area. So we need to then provide that help if they're telling us that. There's no question about that. We also know that there's children who are, I used to say 40% of students thinking about committing suicide. Think about that. These are our children. We need to make them feel engaged and healthy on the campuses and safe. And that is the job of the superintendent of the county, to make a difference in every child's life. Thank you.
Thank you. Entonces, su último comentario.
So, dice que a él le encanta enseñar y una de las acciones que él siempre hace es ir a leerle a los niños de primer grado. En este caso, usualmente lo hace 2 días a la semana. Los niños de primer grado. Entonces, él en especial tiene un niño que se llama Isaac y este niño está haciendo un progreso muy grande desde que él está iniciando irles a leer. El miedo para él es que qué va a pasar cuando Isaac, si el niño no continúa con ese patrón de lectura, entonces qué puede pasarle a este niño Isaac cuando llegue a una edad de high school. Esa es su preocupación de él, de que le gustaría que continuara leyendo. Pero también otra cuestión que trajo es acerca de la vivienda, donde desafortunadamente la vivienda es algo muy importante dentro de la comunidad, donde él está pensando no solamente a nivel comunidad, sino a nivel global. Eso es algo que él dice que necesitamos pensar como comunidad a modo global. De ese modo hay que pensar o necesitan trabajar para los niños, no solamente socialmente, pero también emocionalmente, ya que hay mucha necesidad dentro de los adolescentes, cuando hay especialmente un 40% de niños que está pensando en suicidio. Eso es importante de que se traiga a la mesa a hablar acerca de eso, porque para él necesitan, estoy tratando de suicidio, necesitamos
40% students with suicide. Yeah.
Ok, so para él es importante que obviamente que este número baje. Nada más.
Okay. And with that, I want to thank you for taking the time and being with us here at KBBF 89.1 FM and on the web at kbbf.org. And again, I hope that you were able to share with the community what you needed to share with the Latinx community, since they are the ones who listen for the most part to the show. Gracias una vez más por estar con nosotras aquí en KBBF 89.1 FM y su programa Líderes del Futuro. Thank you.
Thank you.